Well, time to see what launched Craven into Hollywood.
One, two, three!
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I'm here with episode 15 of my Halloween Horror Movie Review Season 3, and this episode is going to be for another Wes Craven movie. This was the first one he directed, and it was also got a remake in the 2000s with his involvement. An actually superior remake, much like the other one I reviewed at the beginning of this season. And this one is going to be for 1972's The Last House on the Left. Yeah. Known as one of his weakest. Although it was his first film. But anyway, what's the plot is? Well, on the eve of her 17th birthday, Mary Collingwood tells her parents that she is going to the concert of underground band Bloodlust in New York with her friend Phyllis Stone. She borrows the family's car and heads with her friend into a dangerous neighborhood in the city. Meanwhile, the sadistic and cruel escapees Krug Stillo and Fred Weasel Podolowski are hidden in a hideout with their partners Sadie and Krug's addicted son Junior Stillo after killing two guards and one shepherd in their runaway. The two girls seek marijuana near the theater and meet Junior that offers some Colombian grass to them. They go to his apartment and are subdued by the criminals that rape Phyllis, and the next morning they hide the girls in the trunk of their convertible and head to Canada. However, they have a problem with the car's route and they stop on the road close to Man's house. When Phyllis tries to escape, the gang still stabs her to death and shoots Mary after humiliating and raping them. They seek shelter in Mary's home, but during the night, her mother overhears the conversation of the criminals telling that they have killed her daughter. She tells her husband and they plot a scheme of revenge the death of their princess. To revenge the death of their princess. Ugh, so how was this made? Well, Sean S. Cunningham made his directional debut with the 1970 white horror film The Art of Marriage, which grossed $100,000. The film attracted the attention of Steve Minnison's company Hallmark Releasing, which had a distribution partnership with American International Pictures. Cunningham made the 1971 film Together as a better version of synchronizing diaries for Together, and soon began editing the film with Cunningham, with whom he became good friends. Hallmark bought the film for $10,000, and it was considered a hit, prompting the company to persuade Cunningham and Craven to make another film with a bigger budget. The company gave them $90,000 to shoot a horror film. Cunningham served as producer and Craven served as writer and director on the project. Written by Craven in 1971, the original script was intended to be a graphic hardcore film, with all actors and crew being committed to filming it as such. However, after shooting began, the decision was made to edit the script to be less harsh. The script, written under the title Night of Vengeance, has never been released. Only a brief glimpse is visible in the featurette called The Crime of the Century, the 2003 documentary in the making of the film. The crux of the plot is based on some Swedish ballet, which I can't pronounce the name of, which itself is the basis of Ingmar Bergman's 1960 film The Virgin Spring, of which Craven was an admirer. Craven envisioned a film in which the violence would be shown in detail on screen, as he felt that many popular films of the era, such as westerns, glamorized violence and the vigilante hero, and gave the public a misleading representation of death in the wake of the Vietnam War. So, after Last House on the Left was planned, filmed, marketed, it would be released on August 30th, 1972, and it was initially damaging to Craven's career and was controversial for its marketing, with the tagline, "Can a movie go too far?" advertising its violence. While not being a massive box office draw at drive-ins, it grossed $3 million against a budget under $90,000. Critics derided the film for its confrontational violence and Craven's use of black comedy. It gave scenes of slapstick comedy intercut with scenes of rape and humiliation, but it has since achieved a call following as nominated for AFI's 100 Years, 100 Thrills, and was particularly troubling for lead actress Peabody, who recalled struggling filming due to a constantly changing script and suffered abuse from her male co-stars. Many of the other actors involved in the film have expressed regret for starring in it decades after its release. As for my reaction, well, I know this is only his first movie, but I consider this one of my least favorite Wes Craven films, even though this was the first one he did. Wes Craven's written and directional debut is amateurish at best. You can definitely see the potential of Craven by watching this early work. However, the movie as a whole is marred by time. While the film may have been quite a shocker back in its day, a second viewing at this point in time doesn't really deliver the chills and thrills that it did back when it was released. Last House on the Left is really the beginning of what was later to come in this type of horror. Monsters and Dracula were now becoming a thing of the past, and horror was taking a new direction by making the average person to be the scariest monster of all. The Last House on the Left really sets the bar for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which would come out a couple years after this, and it depicted four bizarre people who tortured two young teenage girls, much like Texas Chainsaw would, except you don't get people who save dead people and eat human flesh. But as far as the torture that takes place overnight, Chainsaw would later take from this and go much further and deeper into the macabre. Then in 1978, a film entitled I Spit in a Grave that I reviewed last season would also take from Last House, in which the victim of rape gets revenge. But in Last House, the murdered daughter of the parents get the revenge and torture the four insane people in this film. The extreme violence in this film was nothing really new. It's kind of hard to believe that Craven and Cunningham were unaware of Herschel Gordon Lewis, who had been marketing intestine yankers like Bloodfeast to rural drive-ins since the early 60s. If that goes beyond Lewis and our exploitation filmmakers, it is the revelation realism of performances. David A. Hayes is far more believable here. But anyway, back to the review. I can think of a few bad qualities with this film. Like, for starters, most of this movie has horrible acting, it's cut poorly, and several scenes don't make sense, but the last half of the movie is uniquely creepy. For the horrible acting, almost all the performances are just plain bad. I've seen plenty of low-budget horror movies with good acting, so that is no excuse. The film is cut poorly, like there are several parts of the movie that should have been cut. There are 3 separate mentions to the phone is working now, glad your phone is working now, without any backstory to the phone ever not working in the first place. Also, one of the scenes where a girl gets stabbed, they cut back and suddenly she's in the middle of the woods by a tree, which is just a really bad cut. And of course, the bad pacing. The first half of the movie builds no atmosphere or creepiness. They keep cutting to doofy music. After a brutal rape and murder that was acted so poorly, it didn't even seem very brutal at all. They cut to some comedic goofy scene of 2 cops trying to ride in a truck full of chickens. Talk about killing any sort of atmosphere. And before seeing this movie, I had read some plenty of other comments about the film being shocking, and up until about the last half hour, they were just kind of overreacting because this movie's not really even shocking at all. Then again, it's all the way from a 70s, all the way it came out in the 70s now, so it's really old now, it's really outdated. Now, viewers are more jaded now and can handle more than anybody could back in the 70s, but I'm pretty sure even weaker viewers today would find the climax of the film very unsettling. Like, things get a bit crazy that last half hour, and make the movie worth sitting through, I must admit, but the events at the end of the film seemed a bit too coincidental and unbelievable, which took away from some kind of enjoyment. But there can still be some good qualities found. Like, there is a touching quality to the story itself, which I feel contributes to the overall shock value of the film. By building a very brief relationship with the on-screen victims, Murray and Phyllis, the audience cannot help but feel upset and angered by their torture and eventual deaths. Much in a similar way to, say, that of a close friend or family member. To make it worse, this also happens to be on Man's birthday, and she's only 17, which is just abominable. That seems like a horrible birthday, getting kidnapped and raped. Like, who on earth could possibly comprehend being raped and then shot on their 17th birthday? There's no blatant or logical motive for Mary and Phyllis' deaths. They did not break the rules that Craven memorably lays down and scream, apart from maybe trying to buy drugs or dope. In fact, both girls are more or less the epitome of the youth culture of 1960s America, or even sports a peace emblem around her neck, even. The film as a whole is amateurish, but there are shining moments of real terror here. That's why it had such a lasting effect and influence on everything that followed in its footsteps. The grainy film stock and cinema vertery style lend to this filthy atmosphere in a way that's slick. Modern digital simply can't replicate. David Hess is excellent as Krug. He gives an excellent performance. He's probably the best performance of the movie. Chillingly cold and intimidating, his cohorts played by Fred Lincoln and Jeremy Rain are equally unsettling, and their performances are good enough to make us forget they're not actually sadist criminals. But honestly, I just feel like this version's not that great. I feel like this version was done better with the 2009 remake. You're probably wondering my thoughts on the remake. Well, I do like the remake. I'll admit that. Much like with the Hills Have Eyes films, I like the remake better than the original. With Last House on the Left as well, I like the remake better than the original. I feel like the remake just does this plot better. Plus, technically in the remake, I think the daughter actually survives and comes back in the remake. I think the remake ends way happier for me. The remake actually has a more complete ending. And plus the remake, I feel like the remake, the torture of the criminals is more satisfying than here. So yeah, The Last House on the Left from 1972 is not a very good way to kickstart legendary filmmaker Wes Craven's, rest in peace, horror career compared to everything else he did after that. In the end, this version of Last House on the Left can easily be avoided. You want to watch Last House on the Left, just go and watch the 2009 remake. Instead, because that version is honestly way better than this one. For me, anyways. Anyway, I've got nothing else to say of Last House on the Left. This is just not my kind of movie, really. So yeah, that's it for my review of the 1972 version of Last House on the Left. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rank the 1972 version, here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you are a Craven fan, then I'm sorry, but this is not worth a watch or buy for your shelf if you like the 2009 remake. And if you are wondering how I'm going to rank Last House on the Left, the 1972 version, I'm going to give Last House on the Left 1972 a 5 out of 10. There we go. That's it for Last House on the Left, and that's it for episode 15 of Halloween Horror Movie Reviews 3. So you're wondering, what's going to be the next episode? Well, the next episode is going to be for a sequel that I just burned a year and a half ago. One I never liked talking about. I remember calling this the #1 worst horror sequel ever made on the first list of horror sequels I did. And it was, once again, a sequel to a film from 1973 I reviewed last year. Yeah, for those of you Exorcist fans, or people who know of Exorcist, that dreaded second fucking movie is next. Until then, guys, that'll be it for this episode. Thank you all for watching. And if you like this and want to see more, then don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.